Topping today's news, cabinet ministers tour the Carmichael Road Crown lands. The 2022-2023 budget is passed, and major infrastructural works coming for Andros. Good evening. I'm Dorino Saunders, and this is your JCN Evening News. Thanks for joining us. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Police Force, the Department of Immigration and Forestry, along with cabinet ministers, including National Security Minister Wayne Munroe, today in a ride-along with the media toured the former Carmichael well fields to gain a better understanding of the illegal squatting, dumping, burning of charcoal, mining, and illegal gun firing range all happening on Crown land. Those who have been illegally residing in the area have been using bushes, and some have even made makeshift homes with air conditioning units and screen doors. Acting Director of Forestry Unit Danielle Hannock says the illegal making of charcoal has caused some health problems in people who live in the Carmichael Road area.
They're mixing treated wood, they're mixing poison wood, they're mixing other types of wood, even the silver-top palm. So even all of that, we are not clear about the risk, the health risk that causes when you inhale the smoke from the charcoal. So, but we do know that there's a high correlation with cancers, with respiratory challenges in these areas that have high smoke content because of the mixing of the wood especially. So this is actually not the best use. The pine tree, the Caribbean pine, is not the best use for charcoal. Yes, it burns well, but in terms of for our uses, like with cooking especially, this has a high hazard for those who use it. So another challenge here too, this is our water table. It's the highest on the island of New Providence. So these toxins are also seeping into our water table. So not only are we having a risk to the public health with air quality, but also our water quality.
She says they have identified the man who has been running the operation, and he goes by the alias of Vaughn Miller or Ronald Miller. According to Ms. Hannock, he claims to have an original lease for 20 acres of Crown land, but she says he has not been authorized to do any quarry mining. Meantime, an illegal shooting range in the area is posing a risk to air traffic controllers, as it is in the air traffic zone. Staff Intelligence Officer Commander Derek Ferguson says there are also illegal firearms being used at this shooting site. Some cartridges have been found to contain bullets that travel up to 1 mile. Police say they are still investigating the area and will continue to stop any illegal activity on Crown land. Following widespread talks of heavy illegal deforestation in and around the capital, particularly in the southwestern areas of New Providence, National Security Minister Wayne Munroe announcing today at a press briefing at the Office of the Prime Minister the launch of the Bahamas Wildlife Enforcement Network, comprising units from the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Defense Force, Immigration, the Bahamas National Trust, the Forestry Department, and the Department of Environmental Protection and Planning. He further adds that this initiative is again a show of the Davis administration holding true to their blueprint for change.
This morning was a culmination of planning over a period of time. In the blueprint for change, the Davis-Cooper administration foreshadowed a wildlife protection unit of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. On inquiries of Commodore Raymond King, he directed and appointed Lieutenant Commander Desiree Cornet to be the point person on it. On briefing, she presented a concept of an enforcement agency to enforce the laws with regard to all natural resources, not just marine wildlife, but terrestrial wildlife, and indeed all natural resources, including our aggregate. A presentation was made to the Bahamas government, to the cabinet, and the cabinet concluded that we will set up, organize, and launch a robust enforcement agency to protect all natural resources. It has been styled the Bahamas Wildlife Enforcement Network, or BAWIN.
The minister notes that in the blueprint for change, the initial idea was to create a wildlife protection unit of the Defense Force. However, he says the addition would only take away from the armed forces' ability to efficiently carry out their existing responsibilities. Thus, this new unit was created comprising a mix of armed forces branches and modeled after the Fish and Wildlife Enforcement Unit in Florida.
The Defense Force have priorities that relate largely to protecting our borders, to interdicting drugs, guns, irregular migrants, and to a large extent poaching. And so it was determined that we would have a force that would have this focus. We've made a visit to South Florida, to Tallahassee, well, North Florida, Tallahassee, and Miami and South Florida, to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Enforcement Unit, which is the model that we think we will be modeling this on.
Just prior to announcing the launch of this new task force, Minister Monroe and a team of officers from the police and defense force and immigration visited and inspected key areas in southwestern New Providence, including Bonefish Pond, Cowpen Road, and the former Carmichael Road well fields. The areas presumed to be hotspots for this illegal enterprise. According to Minister Monroe, there will be a 14-day voluntary cease and desist period starting today, and thereafter, he says, arrest and seizure operations will begin. The 2022-2023 national budget passed in the lower chamber last evening, but before those plans for the fiscal year, which begin July 1st, can kick in, the budget must move on to the upper chamber for debate. Wrapping up the debate in the House of Assembly on Thursday morning, Prime Minister Philip Davis, while defending those fiscal plans, says the budget is a foundation for change and renewal. This budget, according to the Prime Minister, was built on 3 pillars, including providing relief, generating opportunity, and increasing security, people-driven policies. The Prime Minister defended his administration's budget amidst constant criticism by the opposition.
First, let's cast our memories back. Painfully, but thankfully briefly, the time our country was reeling from one lockdown after another, some of which were announced with no warning. An extraordinary and unprecedented number of Bahamians could not work.
No warning.
Social services, therefore, had to support a record number of Bahamian families. Remember that?
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, it makes no sense to compare those dark lockdown days to today.
That's right.
When the economy is growing and the new day is dawning. Yeah.
Start from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, but sense must be in short supply. And it's time like this that I understand why the old people will say they don't know why they call it common sense, because it ain't common.
Now, the opposition has also criticized the government for proposed cuts to various ministries, particularly the Ministry of Social Services. Prime Minister Davis, in defending that area's budget cut, says the government is spending less compared to a time when 45% of Bahamians were out of work.
We are spending less compared to a time when some 45% of Bahamians were out of work. But we are spending more, much more, 50% more than the prior government spent during 2019. That's the last pre-COVID year. In recognition that times are still very difficult, that's why we're doing it, and that the global inflation crisis is having an enormous impact on Bahamians. So when you criticize to reduce some allocated in social services because it is less than what you spent during the pandemic period, how does that make sense?
None.
The Prime Minister added it is his intention not only to make sure social services has the resources needed to help families, but to make sure there is much needed reform in the agency as well. While Prime Minister Davis contends that the opposition is talking to hear themselves, he says this budget is his first step in establishing a way forward to a more inclusive model for national development, one that is focused on widespread growth and equality. Debate on the national budget will kick off in the upper chamber on Monday, June 19th. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Philip Davis got his official invite to the 27th Annual Conference of Parties, also known as COP27, which will be held in Egypt this year. This invite coming from Ambassador of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Mayor El Adouai. The Prime Minister says, although many pledges have been made over the years to help the country, nothing has been happening. Acknowledging that one of the Prime Minister's main focuses is climate change, Ambassador El Adouai says he is very keen on the Prime Minister attending this conference. Prime Minister Davis says, while there has been some controversy over whether he will attend, he says there is a need for his voice to be heard. COP27 is scheduled to take place in early November. The annual Andros Business Outlook took place on Thursday under the theme Beyond Recovery into Growth. And while there were a number of dynamic speakers and business owners that presented, Leon Lundy, the Member of Parliament for Mangrove Key and South Andros, listed a number of significant projects that are expected to foster economic growth on the island of Andros. We hear more in this next report. During his address at the Andros Business Outlook on Thursday, Leon Lundy, Parliamentary Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister and Member of Parliament for Mangrove Key and South Andros, revealed several major capital works projects the government has planned for Andros, including reconstruction of 16 miles of road connecting historic Red Bays on the western side of the island to economic hubs like Mastic Point, Nicholstown, and Low Sound on the eastern side of North Andros at a cost of $13.5 million. He shared this overall objective the government has for the Big Yard.
As the largest island in our chain, I want to ensure that the future plans involve enhanced coastal protection through preserved natural buffers, maintenance of climate and coastal resilience, expansion of economic and capital growth, improved connectivity and accessibility, and also increased incomes, employment rate, and GDP. Also increased tourism expenditure, increased lobster revenue, and improved education and capacity building, increased number of staff and guides within the ecotourism sector, and the expansion of social capital, improved livelihoods and income equality, and also improved health and well-being.
Mr. Lundy says the government's decision to create the Family Island Infrastructure Fund is evidence that they want to see the islands grow and become resilient. The ability to transport and travel are crucial, and bridges play a critical role. After necessary works and studies have been completed, the following decisions were made for the Stafford and Fresh Creek bridges.
The decisions from the studies are to construct a 2-lane bridge at Fresh Creek with the highest vertical clearance allowed. A 2-lane bridge will also be constructed at Stafford Creek, and this not only meets the requirements, but improves the safety of drivers by aligning with the new highway. The result of the expansion at Fresh Creek is a growth opportunity for the Western Andros territory in economic activities. The timeline for construction is between February and March of 2023.
Works will also be done at the Stanyard Creek and Davy Creek bridges in this fiscal year. Mr. Lundy says ports and docks are not excluded from the government's plans to upgrade infrastructure on Andros.
The docks listed for repairs are Nicholstown, Red Bays, Low Sound, Kung Sound, and Lisbon Creek in Mangrove Key. Concrete ramps will be rebuilt in Nicholstown, Red Bays, and Low Sound, alongside the new docks and attached gazebo and fish cleaning stations. In Lisbon Creek, there will be dredging of the approach channel, a reinforcement of the concrete dock slab, bulkhead reconstruction, and provisions of marine bullets.
According to Mr. Lundy, additional sea dredging will take place in Burnt Rock, with works to include a 234-feet seawall. Meanwhile, the all-purpose gymnasium in the Bluff, South Andros, that will also be used as a hurricane shelter, is 70% complete. A man's body washed up on shore at Arawak Key this morning, leaving police to piece together how the victim met his demise. It was shortly after 8 a.m. that police were called to the scene where the lifeless body was found floating in waters along the western end of the key. Police Press Liaison Officer Superintendent Audley Peters told reporters on the scene that when police retrieved and examined the body of the dark male, there were no signs of injury or decay.
The scene of crime officers examined the body and there were no signs of trauma. At the moment, we do not classify this as a homicide. We will await an autopsy report to tell us what the cause of death was and the identification by a next of kin.
Age of the victim is undetermined at this time, and with police early into their investigations, Superintendent Peters says it is a possibility that the unidentified man may have been a vagrant. He is also saying that it appears that the man may have been in the water overnight. He makes an appeal to families who may have relatives who frequent the Arawak Key area to contact the police immediately.
What we do understand of this victim is that he frequents this area. We do not have a name for him. However, we appeal to members of the family who have a loved one that has not been seen for a while, or who knows that a loved one who frequents this area and has not seen him, to contact the police so that you can assist us in identifying this individual.
With there being a number of apparent drownings in the past and with the summer months approaching, Superintendent Peters is advising those that tend to flock to beaches and pools to acquire strong swimming practices and to use the necessary safety precautions. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back after these commercials.